Today, we are going to share with you a new tool that we developed called CHIA, the Cumulative and Health Impact Assessment Tool for RCRA permits in Iowa. The RCRA CHIA tool was developed by the following Region 7 team members: Amanda Berry, Dr. Ronel Brijmahan, Carlos Chavarria, Dr. Alicia Dutton, Dr. Sala Senkai. We also have Ken Herstowski and Mary Grisolano, who are our senior RCRA permit writers, and myself. My name is Eleodora Chamberlain. So the purpose of the tool is to provide the RCRA permit writers and project managers, environmental justice coordinators, and risk assessors with a step-by-step process on how to conduct a cumulative and health impact assessment for RCRA permits. It's not meant to replace or substitute for an environmental justice analysis, nor is it meant to replace the RCRA regulations. It is meant to inform the RCRA permit writer when reviewing permit applications and renewals. The RCRA CHIA tool is a desktop review to assess cumulative impacts, conduct a preliminary cumulative risk assessment, and conduct a health impact assessment for communities with potential EJ concerns within the vicinity of a RCRA facility. CHIA prioritizes health for overburdened communities that are disproportionately affected by employing a systematic approach to scoping indicators via a comprehensive multi-parametric assessment. CHIA offers a means to actively involve the public who could be impacted by RCRA permitting activities in Iowa. Furthermore, it aids the permit decision makers to select reduction measures that reduce health and environmental impacts on nearby communities. So our goal was to develop a desktop review to assess cumulative and health impacts for RCRA permits in Iowa. CHIA was inspired by the pre-CERCLA screening checklist, NEPA, the Clean Water Act Section 404, risk assessment guidance, and 8 agency-approved databases and tools. We were also given several criteria for this desktop review. The first is that the assessment should be conducted early, meaning 6 months prior to permit renewal or application, and we'll go over the timeframes later in the slides. The other criteria was to take less than 50 hours to complete. As a result, we developed a standard operating procedure, a user manual, Excel workbook, and several training modules.
These are the definitions of cumulative impacts that we incorporated into CHIA. Cumulative impacts has been described in two ways by the 1999 version and the 2022 version shown here. We also included a preliminary cumulative risk assessment analysis in order to do a screening level risk assessment. We married all of these frameworks with a traditional health impact assessment and the stages incorporated into HIAs: screening, scoping, assessment, recommendation, monitoring, and conclusion. All of these definitions were used to develop CHIA in order to address the 2023 Office of Inspector General report and to include all regulatory programs.
The RCRA CHIA tool is conducted by 3 positions: the RCRA permit writer or project manager. All those roles and responsibilities are identified in orange. The EJ coordinator, those responsibilities are identified in purple, and the risk assessor are the responsibilities identified in blue. For each step in the CHIA process, we delineated the roles and responsibilities for each position. If there are 2 or more colors combined, this equates to a CHIA team meeting or discussion. And there are 5 team meetings incorporated into this process, and each one has a prescriptive agenda to follow. CHIA begins with the kickoff meeting set up by the RCRA permit writer, and they go over team introductions and logistics. Next is the step 1 screening. This captures general RCRA information about the facility, permit, the communities involved, and the location. In step 2, this is public engagement. This is conducted by the RCRA permit writer and EJ coordinator. For step 3, the CHIA duties are divided according to the mixed methods used for the analysis during the assessment. The risk assessor conducts a preliminary cumulative risk assessment. The EJ coordinator conducts a health, environmental, and quality of life assessment. The RCRA permit writer, EJ coordinator use NEPA Assist, Waters, GeoVero, ORM, and ECHO. And then we move on to step 3, interpretation. This is where CHIA defines interpretation as shared intelligence and knowledge gained between and amongst the CHIA team. The data from the tools and analyses are entered in the CHIA summary. This coincides with the cross-program coordination process. The RCRA permit writer and EJ coordinator meet with the various EPA programs and using a prescribed list of questions, discuss the results from the 4 tools and determines the level of concern by consensus. With the information contained in the CHIA summary and the cross-program coordination process, the CHIA team decides whether the results are sufficient for the RCRA permit writer to move forward with step 4, or if more data are needed to understand the impacts experienced by the community or communities. And then steps 4 through 6, they are completed by the RCRA permit writer and their program. Step 4, reduction measures. The RCRA permit writer can select from several engineering and non-engineering controls to help minimize the environmental and health impacts to surrounding communities. For steps 5 and 6, the RCRA permit writer continues with their permitting process, finalizing the permit and reviewing the monitoring reports. Next, I'll hand it over to Sala.
The CHIA tool is an Excel workbook with multiple tabs inspired by the pre-CERCLA screening checklist and the NEPA 404 CI process. Identify CHIA components, guidance, QA/QC, and 5 team meeting agendas. Step 1, facility, permit, and community information. Step 2, public engagement. Step 3, technical analysis and interpretation of the results, incorporates 7 analyses from various programs and regulatory processes. Step 4, use the information from the previous steps to identify additional reduction and control measures. Step 5, RCRA PM follows through the program's process while following the 40 CFR 270 regulations.
CHIA starts with step 1, screening, where the team compiles and reviews background information about the facility, permit, and community. The team reviews the facility information, whether it's a new application or a permit renewal, the type of permit, and whether the facility is operational or closed. The team discusses the permit information, the hazards managed by the facility or any releases, the contaminants of concern, and any previous risk assessments. Next, the community profile provides the background demographic information about the communities living around the facility. Here we use the CDC Environmental Justice Index and EJ Screen socioeconomic indices. CDC's tool provides information on whether the community is overburdened with existing health issues, and EJ Screen provides an overview of the community's demographics. They also discuss whether the review area is rural or urban. And finally, the team reviews the landscape, topography, and watershed to understand the flows and direction in the event of a spill. We also take note of facility density and intensity.
Step 2, scoping phase coincides with RCRA's permitting public engagement process. We highly recommend a CHIA evaluation be conducted 6 months prior to a permit renewal or application, since conducting a CHIA early provides the RCRA permit writer, EJ coordinator, and risk assessor ample time to meet with the potentially impacted communities to gain their insight and input. Once the permitting process begins, there are several opportunities to engage and incorporate comments from the public and/or communities via RCRA's permitting process. During this time, the EJ coordinator can work with the RCRA permit writer to develop any outreach materials or messages, offer translational services, tailor information materials explaining the permitting process to the needs of the community, and/or attend any informational meetings with the RCRA permit writer to address any of the community's questions. Next, we move to step 3, the assessment phase. Step 3, analysis. The CHIA duties are divided according to the mixed methods used for the analyses. The risk assessor conducts a preliminary cumulative risk assessment. EJ coordinator conducts a health, environmental, and quality of life assessment using EJ Screen supplemental indices, CJust, and RED. RCRA permit writer or EJ coordinator use NEPA Assist, Waters GeoViewer, ORM, and ECHO to analyze the impacts from multiple regulatory programs. I now hand over to Dr. Sala.
In addition to the preliminary cumulative risk assessment, CHIA includes the use of several tools and processes to assess health and environmental stressors. We used mixed methodology and combined quantitative, qualitative, and semi-qualitative analysis for the desktop review. In the CHIA Excel workbook, we dedicated one or more tabs for each of the tools along with a preliminary cumulative risk assessment. RCRA PM completes NEPA Assist, Waters GeoViewer, ECHO, and ORM, Army Corps of Engineers permit database. The EJ coordinator completes the tabs for EJ Screen supplemental indices. From here on, I'll just say EJ Screen. Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool. From here on, CGEST, Regional Environmental Health Data Viz app, or RED. Risk Assessor conducts preliminary cumulative risk assessment. In the next 3 slides, we'll dive into the indicators used in the CHIA tool.
In step 3, preliminary CRA, the purpose is to screen the risk receptors to both chemical and non-chemical stressors and to give an overview of risk quantitatively and qualitatively. The information that goes into the prelim CRA comes from past permits, previous risk assessments, or the new permit application. There are 2 tabs in the Excel workbook dedicated to the prelim CRA. One is for the list of questions you see here, and the second is for the risk assessor's worksheet. The risk assessors conduct a conceptual site model, hazard identification, exposure assessment, and integrative analysis. The second tab of the CRA has 2 templates for different types of permits, operational and storage. This tab also assesses if there have been any significant changes since the permit application or risk assessment in screening levels or risk and toxicity information. It is very similar to CERCLA's 5-year review process. Both templates seek to answer the overall question of, is the current situation protective of human health, or is more information needed to make that determination? This question is a screening level snapshot in time.
CHIA includes the use of the following tools to assess health and environmental stressors, 1 tab for each in the CHIA workbook. The EJ coordinator completes the tabs for EJ Screen, CGEST, and RED. Under EJ Screen, we have PM 2.5, diesel PM exposure, air toxics cancer risk, traffic proximity, lead paint, Superfund proximity, and wastewater discharge. For CGEST, climate change, energy cost, health, heart disease, diabetes, life expectancy, transportation, barriers and volume, in addition to water and wastewater discharge tanks. The RED Viz app includes PM 2.5, asthma, number of airports, old homes, and childhood lead poisoning. Note, CGEST assists with determining if overburden and meets socioeconomic threshold, while RED helps visualize years of agency-wide data to tease out visible relationships.
When reviewing cumulative impacts for other EPA programs, we use the following 4 tools. NEPA Assist provides information on active and inactive NIPDs and air permits, whether there are other EPA programs such as brownfield sites within the review area that's in a FEMA flood zone, and whether there's any impaired streams and water bodies within the radius. Waters GeoViewer builds on NEPA Assist by showing what those impairments are. ORM, or the Army Corps of Engineers OMBL Regulatory Module, shows the CWA 404 permits within the review area, and ECHO, or the Enforcement and Compliance History Online, provides information about violations and compliance monitoring activities within the community. Next, we move to the interpretation phase in step 3, where the team convenes for team meeting number 3 to discuss the CHIA summary.
Once we filled out the data from the previous tabs, they are auto-populated into the CHIA summary tab that you see here. In the upper left corner, we have information about the facility and CHIA team information. Then we also have various sections across here in the summary tab. The first group is the preliminary cumulative risk assessment. This determines whether the actions in the permit are protective of human health. It also looks at organs and includes the effects on target organs and a review of any impacts from chemical and non-chemical stressors across 4 parameters. We also look at health, various health burdens such as asthma, childhood blood lead levels, and COPD, also quality of life indicators such as housing, transportation, and workforce development, also environmental indicators such as PM 2.5, traffic, and lead paint. We also include community concerns from past permits and/or new community input. Then in this last table here, we have other EPA programs where we consider water impairments, flood zone, NEPA, NIPD's 404 permits, Superfund sites, and violations.
With the information contained in the CHIA summary, the team goes over the data covered under NEPA Assist, Water, ORM, ECHO, and determines which divisions and programs to continue the discussion with other EPA programmatic activities. In the next slide, we'll go over what the CPC process looks like.
Cross-program coordination goes hand in hand with the CHIA summary in the previous slide. In order to account for issues stemming from other EPA programs, the CHIA team must coordinate discussions to address any issues or data acquired from NEPA Assist, Water's GeoViewer, ORM, and ECHO. For those programs resulting in potential concerns or questions, the RCRA project manager and EJ coordinator meet and discuss the outcomes with a subject matter expert in each of the respective EPA programs, water, air, land, and enforcement, to determine the level of concern for that factor in the CHIA summary. We generated over 60 questions to prompt a robust discussion between the CHIA team and the subject matter expert program coordinators. During these meetings, the team reviews the information generated from the 4 tools and discusses each of the prescribed questions. The responses from the questions are then used for the CHIA summary interpretation. Here are just a few examples of the questions addressed during this discussion. A question about air permits may be, are monitoring reports available if needed? Whereas if ECHO shows an enforcement violation, they can ask the enforcement program what other efforts are being conducted to mitigate the impacts. At this point, the team has discussed the data and information with the other EPA programs, and now they meet to determine levels of concern by color. These are categorized by traffic light colors, red, yellow, and green, and coincide with levels of concern, with red being major concerns, yellow minor concerns, and green minimal or no concerns. For EJ screen supplemental indices, CGEST and red, the colors are determined according to that respective tool's thresholds. We didn't change or modify their legends, but instead used them to our advantage and put them into their respective traffic light colors. For NEPA Assist, Water's GeoViewer, ORM, and ECHO, the concern levels of red, yellow, and green are determined by the team and results from the cross-program coordination. This summary informs the team whether the review area is overburdened with health issues, whether the review area is characterized as a community with potential environmental justice concerns, and whether the existing actions and conditions are protective of human health. It also highlights issues that might be of major concern, such as flooding, which could create issues if there was a spill or release. It identifies data gaps that affect whether a determination can be made. It assists the RCRA permit writer in determining whether the permit renewal or application with the existing permit conditions will or will not compound the community's existing burdens. The goal of the summary is to determine if the permit application renewal will or will not compound the community's existing burdens.
We remain at the implementation phase of step 3. The CHIA team decides whether the results are sufficient for the RCRA project manager, permit writer to move forward with step 4, or if more information or data are needed to understand the impacts experienced by the communities.
The CHIA team then reassembles once again to determine whether more information is needed. This is why it's important to start at least 6 months before permit application or renewal, since it allows the team to have a buffer before the permit process begins to collect additional data for the whole picture. Using the CHIA summary and the completed concern levels, the team addresses whether there's any identified unacceptable risk to human health, whether there's identified communities with potential EJ concerns, whether there's other areas of major concerns, such as within water air programs, enforcement and compliance, NEPA projects, Superfund, and RCRA. If it's determined that more data is needed, then the team discusses the type of data, who would collect the data, and how it would be collected and analyzed. This aids the RCRA program to determine whether or not we need to conduct higher level assessment or additional monitoring efforts.
Once the team determines they have all the information they need, the remaining steps 4 to 6 are conducted by the RCRA program only. In step 4, the RCRA permit writer or project manager identifies if any engineering and/or non-engineering controls can be applied to the permit conditions to reduce any negative impacts on the surrounding communities. Step 4 uses the assessment from steps 1 to 3 to provide information to the RCRA permit writer and/or project manager for the permit. RCRA permit writer or project manager uses the drop-down features to identify reduction measures for the permit. In this tab, we provide the RCRA permit writer or project manager with 80 to 100 reduction measures to choose from. They are divided by the type and include a list of potential engineering and/or non-engineering reduction efforts. The RCRA permit writer or project manager reviews the list of reduction measures and determines which ones are applicable. They can choose from the engineering controls such as emissions, off-site soil impacts, surface water, groundwater, vapor intrusion, and non-engineering controls such as light or noise pollution, dust, truck or heavy equipment traffic.
To test CHIA, we conducted several simulations. We'll go over the first CHIA simulation that we conducted on a 2017 RCRA permit for John Deere Waterloo Works located in Waterloo, Iowa. It's a 280-acre light industrial facility that lies at the confluence of Blackhawk Creek and the Cedar River. The CHIA simulation was conducted by a RCRA permit writer, EJ coordinator, and 2 risk assessors. We hypothesized that it would take less than 50 hours to complete. Next, we'll go over the first CHIA summary results.
After the CHIA summary tab has been completed, the team determines the concern levels based on the data and discussions with other EPA programs. The RCRA permit writer uses the CHIA results information in their decision-making process. In this example, the review area is overburdened with high blood lead levels in children and is characterized as an environmental justice community. The CHIA results also inform us that the existing permit actions and conditions are protective of human health and there are no data gaps. The goal is to determine if the permit application or renewal will or will not compound the community's existing burdens. And in this permit example, renewing the John Deere permit will not compound the adjacent community's existing burdens.
So in summary, we used the CHIA tool on 3 permits for disposal facility, post-closure, and storage facilities. We incorporated data from multiple EPA programs in water, air, Superfund, brownfields, and enforcement. We included public comments from nearby communities through RCRA's permitting authority, and we collaborated information from multiple divisions and programs within EPA. The CHIA results for each of the 3 permits corroborated with the permit writer's final decisions to renew the permit as is. This means that the existing permit conditions and reduction measures were sufficient to meet the concerns identified in the CHIA results. So we designed the tool to be completed in less than 50 hours. You want to guess how long it took us to conduct the desktop reviews? Well, I won't keep you waiting any longer. The time to complete a CHIA desktop review for a RCRA permit ranged from 12.5 to 26 hours total for all 3 positions, and that includes QA/QC, including team meetings. The EJ quarter spent on average a little over an hour. Risk assessor spent on average just under 10 hours on the preliminary cumulative risk analysis. RCRA permit writer spent an average of 3 to 4 hours, and then the average time spent on team meetings was anywhere between 4 to 5 hours. The deliverables for this project include an approved standard operating procedure, a user manual, and an Excel workbook. The RCRA CHIA tool and its documents were reviewed internally by several regions and programs and externally by CDC's ATSDR, and it was beta tested by 2 regions and 2 program offices. We had 28 reviewers and contributors and received close to 350 comments. We developed a SharePoint site that houses all of the information along with over 20 training modules, slides, and recordings for each of the tabs in the Excel workbook. We want to thank you for listening to the RCRA CHIA overview presentation. You have accomplished the first step towards applying the tool to your RCRA program. And if you want to learn more about the RCRA CHIA tool, check out our SharePoint site for more information. If you have any questions, please contact me via email, Teams, or phone. Thank you very much.